Howdy, ASCE Dallas. This is Jonathan Brower, your ASCE Dallas branch president. Welcome to the June virtual branch meeting. Thank you for joining us this month. Before we begin the main program, we wanted to cover a few branch announcements.
The June 14th program of The Bridge will be hosted by Samantha Vale and Nick Phillips and begin at 1 p.m. via Teams. As always, we will highlight information important for the young engineer's developing career. Our featured guest this month will be Mark Boyd from LCA Environmental, showcasing an overview of engineering certifications, including what they mean, their uses, and how to get them. We will also have a panel discussion on pursuing higher education options. If you are interested in attending this month's Bridge program, a link to the Teams meeting can be found in this month's ASCE newsletter, or you can contact Samantha Vale or Nick Phillips via email. Thank you. Hello, this is Chad Ostrander. I am excited to announce the 2021 ASCE Dallas Scholarship Golf Tournament, sponsored by ADS. The tournament will be held Monday, October 4th at the Texas Rangers Golf Club, with a shotgun start at 8 a.m. Breakfast will be served during registration before the tournament, and an awards ceremony and lunch will be held following the completion of the tournament. All proceeds made during the tournament go towards the GB Man Scholarship Fund. If you would like to become a sponsor or enter a team for the tournament, registration is now live on the ASCE Dallas website. Click Read More under the Upcoming Events section. You can then add the event to your calendar and click Register Now to be taken to the registration page. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the 2021 Scholarship Golf Tournament. As this year's fundraising chair, I am also excited to announce that we are now accepting meeting sponsorships for our in-person meetings, currently being planned to start later this year. If your company is interested in sponsoring a meeting, please contact me at fundraising@dallasasce.org or visit us online at dallasasce.org and navigate to become a sponsor. Thank you. And thank you to this month's meeting sponsor, TNP.
As a reminder, this ASCE Dallas branch virtual meeting is free to watch. However, we are charging a $10 fee for the PDH certificates. The proceeds from this month's PDH certificates will be split evenly between the ASCE Dallas GB Man branch scholarship and the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas. Last month, the ASCE Dallas branch donated $750 each to the Scholarship Fund and the Austin Street Center. Thank you to all our members for your generosity and support. You can visit our branch website at www.dallasasce.org or click the link in the video description below to pay for and obtain your PDH certificate. The PDH certificates will be available for purchase until the end of the month. We have a couple other announcements, including The announcement that next month's meeting will be our annual joint meeting with the Fort Worth branch. This is scheduled for Friday, July 17th. It'll be a virtual meeting that will be broadcast via YouTube. We also want to let you know that the Dallas branch is working hard to host our August branch meeting in person back at the VU Meeting and Event Center. Please be on the lookout for more information in future newsletters and on our social media platforms. We will now get started with the main meeting presentation. If you have any comments or questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat to the right of the presentation screen. To introduce our main speaker, I will now pass it off to our ASCE Dallas Branch Programs Chair, Carlos Valderrama.
Howdy everyone, and welcome to our June branch meeting. Today I'm very excited to introduce our two speakers, Varuna Singh and Grady Mapes with TXDOT Houston, to talk to us about the North Houston Highway Improvement Project. Varuna Singh is a TXDOT Houston Deputy District Engineer, and he has 18 years of experience with the TXDOT department. Before becoming a member of the TXDOT family, Varuna graduated from the University of Texas at Arlington with the Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering in 2002. Varuna began his career with TXDOT at the Weatherford area office in the Fort Worth district, where he transitioned to project delivery in 2010, serving as a deputy PM on the 13-mile, $2.1 billion North Toronto Express concession project. In 2012, Varuna became the PM of the 30-mile, $1.4 billion I-35 East Express Lane design build project here in Dallas. Since 2015, Varuna has served as the Houston District's Alternative Project Delivery Director, implementing over $3 billion in design and construction projects and developing over $4 billion for procurement. In his spare time, Varuna enjoys traveling, hiking, cooking, and spending time with his family and friends. Grady Mapes was appointed the Director of Houston's District Alternative Project Delivery on April 1st, 2020. In this role, Grady oversees the district's Alternative Project Delivery program, including over $2 billion in design and construction and over $3 billion in procurement. Grady graduated from Texas A&M University with a bachelor's degree of science in mechanical engineering in May 2003. Grady has over 17 years of transportation experience with the department, beginning in September 2003, when he joined the Central Houston area office as an engineering assistant. In August 2012, Grady was appointed assistant area engineer in the Brazoria County area office. In November 2014, he was assigned to the 35-mile new location State Highway 99 Grand Parkway segments F and G design build project, assisting with construction activities. Since his appointment in March 2016 as the area engineer of the Fort Bend Waller area office, Grady has overseen design, construction, and maintenance activities in both Fort Bend and Waller counties. Grady and his wife Shannon have 3 sons, Mitchell, Everett, and Reese. The boys keep him pretty busy with sports and Boy Scout activities. I will now pass it over to Varuna and Grady to give us a long-awaited update on the North Houston Highway Improvement Projects. Thanks.
Thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to present the North Houston Highway Improvement Project to the ASCE group in Dallas. My name is Varuna Singh, and I'm the Houston District Deputy District Engineer. And I'm joined today with our district's Director for Alternative Delivery, Grady Mapes. We're going to present kind of different parts of the project. I'll do an overview of the project and a number of the mitigations that we are proposing, environmental mitigations, and Grady will get kind of more into the weeds on how we intend to manage traffic in downtown Houston during construction. And some other technical aspects of the project. So with that, I'm going to, hopefully you guys can see my slides, and I'll proceed on with my portion. All right, so big picture overview of the corridor. Actually, our efforts started back in 2003 with a joint study with Metro, the Houston Region's, Harris County's lead transit authority, and the region's Metropolitan Planning Organization. For Dallas-Fort Worth, that's NCT-COG. For Houston, it's Houston Galveston Area Council, or HGAC. And the corridor study area was from downtown Houston north to Bush Intercontinental off of Beltway 8. So Beltway 8 being the second loop ring in the Houston region. Second one out from downtown. With that effort, joint effort, Metro, it was deemed feasible for Metro to construct the extension of the light rail from U of H downtown up to the North Line Transit Center, and that's denoted in red on the map, the red line to go with the red line extension. And TXDOT continued on with the highway component. With the highway component along 45 from Beltway 8 to I-10 having proposed expansion of today's single reversible HOV transit lane to a 2 lanes in each direction facility. The project is broken up into 3 segments. Segment 1 being the purple from Beltway 8 to 610 along 45. And then segment 2 is the blue segment along 45 from 610 to I-10. And segment 3 is the green segment, which comprises really 3 interstates that surround downtown: I-10 to the north, 45 to the west, 69 to the south and east, and then the terminus of 288 coming up from the south, State Highway 288. So we published the draft environmental impact statement in 2017, conducted the public hearing and received comments. And then in 2018 and 19, we published the 12 technical reports that go with the EIS for public comments. And then in 2020, we published the final EIS with the accompanying final technical reports for public comment. And then earlier this year, we were able to issue the record of decision to conclude the environmental clearance process in early February. So why is TXDOT proposing the North Houston Highway Improvement Project, or an HHIP? It's to, we know that the corridor has high levels of existing congestion. Many of you may know that Texas A&M Transportation Institute publishes annually the top 100 most congested roadway segments across the state. And this particular corridor project has 5 in the top 10 across the state. So clearly it is congested. We know the region also will grow by some estimates from current 6 million to around 10 million by 2040. With that is anticipated projected traffic growth. There are certain elements that are outdated in their design in terms of curvature, of direct connector ramps, and low bridge clearances. Long stretches of the corridor also lack inside and outside shoulders. And it's an older corridor. We haven't done a major investment, capital improvement in over 30 years. So the purpose of the project would be to apply current design standards to enhance safety, mitigate congestion by improving mobility and operational efficiency. A big part of the project would be to expand transit and carpool capacity with a 2-way 24/7 operation, specifically along I-45 in segments 1 and 2 as they terminate into downtown. Improve drainage. For those that don't work, live, or play in Houston, you probably have some awareness that drainage and heavy rainfall is an issue we contend with. Unfortunately, sometimes on a monthly basis, we've got major rainfall events, and certainly in the hurricane season. So a big significant effort with the project is to improve drainage in the corridor, and then it has a positive effect with the adjacent communities next to the corridor, and certainly maintain 45 as an effective evacuation route. I want to touch briefly on kind of project development in terms of funding. So you can see the segments there, and it's kind of reverse order of what's funded and kind of our plan of attack of project delivery. So if we kind of had thought about it when we numbered the segments back in the day on when we would secure funding and kind of come up with a game plan, perhaps we would have numbered it differently. So we're going to go in reverse order. We're looking to deliver segment 3 first, then move north to segment 2, and then finish out with segment 1. And you can see with combining segments 2 and 3, we've got over 76% of the construction dollars secured, so $5 billion of funding committed. And then we've got segment 1 is currently unfunded, representing about 24% of roughly $6.7 billion construction costs. So we're well on our way to securing the funding to deliver the corridor, which is kind of a pleasant situation to be in, to be frank, on a major initiative like this, to get the funding secured in this manner relative to the conclusion of the environmental clearance process. So obviously, as much as we'd like to expedite construction, the bandwidth of the construction industry to absorb $6.7 billion in construction all at once is limited. And so our plan to deliver the corridor is shown there with 4 projects, distinct projects in segment 3, a single project in segment 2, and perhaps 4 projects in segment 1, as shown on the map and shown on the table, but perhaps we can combine large portions of project 1A with segment 2 from a constructability standpoint. So that's still, we're still evaluating that. We're going to use both delivery methods that we have available to us. Our traditional design bid build or low bid letting, as well as design build alternative delivery, which is under Grady's umbrella. The first project is along 69, 3A. That's hard bid, design bid build traditional. And right next to it is the first design build, 3B. So we're looking to push those out to construction in fiscal year 2022. And you can see the completion years. The idea would be then every 2 years after that, we push out the next component. So 3C would follow 2 years later with the design build procurement, and then 3D after that. And as funding comes online, we'll look to schedule portions of segment 1. So if you follow the news and transportation news in particular, 45 or NHIP is high profile. It's been a high profile project. There is certainly a vocal critics of the project, and in listening to those and throughout the environmental clearance process and the stakeholders, we've come up with a number of mitigations that is part of the approved environmental clearance documents, the final environmental impact statement, as well as the record of decision or ROD. And so I kind of want to go over at a high level some of the significant mitigation we are proposing for the project. So regarding the property impacts we are having, and we have latitude to we'll certainly make a fair market value offer on the property, but we've committed to go above and beyond fair market values to assess the fair market value as if the impacted homeowner would like to remain in the neighborhood. So instead of diluting the comparables to looking kind of a wider area, geographic area, we're actually, the comparables are intentionally selected from the neighborhood for which the the impacted property currently, homeowner currently resides or tenant. And so that'll kind of drive by its nature a higher value of compensation so that the homeowner or renter, if they so choose, remain in their current neighborhood. Federal law requires them to choose, but while we can compensate them for that higher amount to remain local, it's ultimately their choice. Additional to the compensation, we are committing to offering enhanced relocation advisory services to each displaced resident, whether they're a homeowner or a tenant, to guide them through the acquisition and relocation process and and this extends to financial literacy, the nuts and bolts of perhaps choosing between continuing to rent or going into home ownership. We are impacting 2 public housing properties with Clayton Homes and Kelly Village. And so we have approached those acquisitions to compensate Houston Housing Authority, which is the entity that manages those 2 properties, so that they're able to reconstruct in the downtown Houston area. So obviously, whenever you're reconstructing or building in a major metropolitan region, it's going to be more expensive. And so the compensation is commensurate with that. The new units will have significant improvements over the current conditions of both Clayton and Kelly. So that's a positive for the tenants. In addition to compensating directly impacted homeowners and renters, we are committing $27 million to construct affordable housing stock in the affected neighborhoods. So this is in addition to what we have to do as far as compensating the properties we are impacting. So this is a grant program. We're looking to partner with a state nonprofit to administer the grant, so they would receive applications from local entities that are in the affordable housing arena to apply for portions of the $27 million to build actual housing stock in the adjacent and impacted communities. And as a statement, this is separate apart from and above and beyond the compensation to the property owners. Let's see. So here's a quick example of how we're looking to go above and beyond the compensation. So if we do an assessment and appraisal of the property we're impacting for land plus the improvements, let's say, as an example, it's appraised at $250,000. We look around the neighborhood and the same comparable, we can't find something except for $400,000. So right off the bat, if we were to only pay the appraised value, the property owner would be short $150 if they want to stay in the local area. And so the commitment is to pay the $250, the appraised value, then compensate the additional $150 in what's called a supplement, housing supplement, to get up to that $400,000. And so that's kind of the approach, showing with the calculation how that extra compensation would work to keep folks, if they so choose, in the local neighborhood. And that's all before we compensate all eligible moving costs. For renters, if someone is renting a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, that's the current rent is $800 a month. You look around the neighborhood and you can't find something for that for $1,200 a month. That's a $400 difference. We are prepared to do a lump sum check for the tenant that actually signs a lease at the new location for the $1,200. We would issue a lump sum check for the $400 a month over 42 months, totaling $16,800. And so that's to get that resident reestablished in the new location with certainty over 42 months at that higher rate. And that would be before we compensate. The moving costs would be on top of that, would be compensation for eligible moving costs. This is a quick rundown of the public housing properties I mentioned earlier. Clayton Homes, we are impacting 100% of it. The key thing, perhaps to take away here, is 112 of the 296 units were actually impacted and closed by HHA by Hurricane Harvey. And so our compensation actually includes those units. And so the reestablishment of Clayton Homes, which is anticipated to be over 2 properties, 2 separate sites, allows HHA the dollars to rebuild the full 296, even though the project itself didn't impact 112. And so that was a commitment we made to make whole the low-income public housing stock in that general area of Houston, known as Fifth Ward. We have come to an agreement with HHA for Clayton Homes, where we have given them a $7 million out of a $90 million agreement so they can get a jump start on constructing those 2 replacement sites. And we're in the process of relocating the current residents if they so choose, and they will have first right of return to the new sites if they so desire to come back. Kelly Village, it's a 29% impact that the project is having, and we are committed to structuring the acquisition in the same manner, where we're in a position of depositing the dollars well ahead of construction, so HHA has the financial resources to rebuild the units before we need the property for construction. And those negotiations are ongoing. Air quality. So this is on major highway projects, obviously in metropolitan areas is a concern. The data here shows actually that by and large, air quality is improving in the Houston region. This is shown with metrics that for a region that is in non-attainment, that the metrics that are monitored by EPA and TCEQ are actually improving compared to increase in population and daily vehicle miles traveled. So you can see as the population has increased in Houston from 2000 to 2017 and miles traveled and also increased, you can see the O2 and the NO2 and the fine particulate matters, as well as ozone, have actually gone in the opposite direction in a good way. So with that, TXDOT is still committed to providing dust suppression during construction, and we are committed to funding and deploying ambient air monitoring for a minimum of 5 years during construction for the segments. And the results of the monitoring would be on a publicly accessible website to kind of show, the first monitoring, I believe, is next to an elementary school that's adjacent to the corridor, to kind of show data that, the project itself is not impacting air quality at that site. Noise impacts. So I'll say the corridor is so old that it actually we didn't have the noise mitigation requirements in place when the original corridor was constructed. So right off the bat, with the implementation of this project, those requirements would get implemented. So certainly the noise analysis shows that certain noise walls were warranted in certain locations. But in addition to the warranted noise walls, TXDOT is providing adjacent property owners in environmental justice, which are high minority, low income areas, the opportunity to receive noise mitigation that did not otherwise qualify under the noise analysis criteria. And so we're calling these aesthetic walls. I don't miss an opportunity to remind our folks we probably should have come up with a better name, because aesthetic walls give the impression that it's going to be better looking than the noise walls. They're essentially noise walls, and the same treatments will be offered for input from the adjacent property owner as noise walls to offset adverse impacts in high minority and low income areas. They also provide a visual screen. Just like noise walls, these aesthetic walls the final decision whether or not they're constructed will follow the same procedure as noise walls, where it's a majority vote for the directly adjacent landowner. This mitigation constitutes about 8.1 million above the current noise walls, and it actually would increase the number of benefited receivers by 32% compared to the receivers under the warranted noise walls. Additionally, we're looking to mitigate noise by constructing longitudinal timing on concrete paving. Less friction with the timing in line with the tires means less noise. So we're pretty excited about that, to roll that out in construction. Flooding, we will be applying the new Atlas 14 rainfall criteria. The main lanes and managed lanes will be designed to remain passable in the 500-year storm events. Pump stations will pump stormwater into detention basins, and detention basins will be sized to hold stormwater until it can be safely released into the receiving bayous. You can see the map there, the reality of where the project sits with intersecting and paralleling the major bayous in the region. Working from south to north, you've got Braze down below, Buffalo Bayou, and White Oak, and then we cross Greens up north in segment 1. In addition to the highway-specific improvements for drainage, after Hurricane Harvey, the city of Houston and flood control applied for FEMA grants for 2 bypass canals in the Central Business District for that along Buffalo Bayou where the cursor is. And so TXDOT is actually an engineering and financial partner with the city and Harris County Flood Control because, as we all know, a drop of water really doesn't care about jurisdiction. It's going to flow where it's easiest to flow. And so we recognize the value of leveraging the improvements by other entities beyond the state's right-of-way and our core responsibility for drainage with the highway. That's why we're contributing financially to their FEMA application for those 2 bypass canals because there's an overall regional benefit to get those canals constructed. Specifically, Little White Oak Bayou, which is the northern part of segment 2 and the southern part of segment 1. So this is in the 610 area, 610 and I-45. This is where the purple segment met the blue segment if you're visually oriented. The project, that area independent sites on the west side of 45. Large portions are in the floodplain today, and these improvements combine TXDOT and the canals I mentioned earlier would bring some dramatic improvements to this area with 2 to 5 foot reduction in the 500-year floodplain water surface elevation along Little White Oak, as well as which would result in approximately 760 structures being pulled out of the floodplain. And that's in the 45-610 interchange in the northwest quadrant. So a lot of the critics of the project want more transit. And so what we offer is that the project itself, before its conception, did take transit into consideration when we jointly studied the corridor with Metro and the MPO, starting back all the way back in 2003. The project is the highway component. We're talking about an interstate 45 mainly that is a designated hurricane evacuation route. So TXDOT has a certain responsibility to keep 45 as a viable interstate facility for drivers, freight. Port of Houston is one of the largest ports in the nation, and so truck freight movement is critical to the regional economy as well as statewide and national economy. But we did consider and incorporate transit every step along the way. As I mentioned earlier, Metro delivered the transit component with the red line extension shown on the map with the red. The vast majority of the added capacity of the highway component is in the form of non-toll managed lanes, which actually greatly expand Metro's bus service and carpool vehicles. So these improvements would incentivize transit and carpool use, which are critical travel demand management tools to reduce single occupancy vehicle. So TXDOT does not have the policy directive to cause congestion for folks to make a mode choice away from single occupancy to carpooling or transit. But what we do have policy direction and we think is the appropriate way to manage congestion and to move the needle on driver behavior is to provide options that over time causes that change in behavior. And so expanding the current reversible HOV transit lane in the middle of 45 today to a reliable 2 lanes in each direction with adequate shoulders, we think is how you do that in a responsible way. Certainly with the Port of Houston, freight truck mobility is a critical need for the corridor. The American Transportation Research Institute 2021 top 100 truck bottlenecks across the nation. 45 has 3 spots on that list, with the 3 being the top 25, and this is across the nation. And certainly 45 has been developed in accordance with the region's long-range regional transportation plan. The project also significantly improves pedestrian and bike facilities and safety components. So out of the coordination with the city, we developed the pedestrian realm concept, which would increase the space behind a protective curb for both pedestrians and bicyclists. The project also reconnects several streets behind the convention center, one of which will be a dedicated bike pedestrian movement between east of downtown and the central business district. The project also reconnects Andrews Street with a pedestrian bike only bridge on the west side of downtown. We're pretty excited about this reconnection because it would reconnect Freemanstown, historic African-American neighborhood, which spans the central business district inside 45 with the larger Fourth Ward area outside the central business district to the west. We will design and construct the highway elements over the bayous to accommodate pedestrian and bike facilities on the upper banks of the bayous. TXDOT, in fact, has delivered a number of those projects for the city and other stakeholders as those stakeholders have built out a pretty extensive trail system along the bayous that exists today. And certainly any new ponds that we construct will be evaluated in order to accommodate new trail connections on the upper perimeter of the ponds. This is a visual of the pedestrian bike concept, pedestrian bike realm concept. And so you've got your typical approach on the left with a cross street with a bike lane. Typically, we put the bike lane in with the travel lane, the outside travel lane, vehicle travel lane. With the realm concept, we're looking to move the bike lane behind the protective curb, in addition to having a 5-foot buffer. And so that nearly doubles the space from what we typically do with a 6-foot sidewalk, 3-foot bike lane, 9 feet to about 17 feet with the sidewalks, then the bike lane, then the buffer. If a cross street, the city does not want a bike lane on that particular cross street as it crosses the state's right-of-way, either over or under the freeway, typically we would build a 6-foot sidewalk on each side. What the project is committing to is a 7-foot sidewalk with that 5-foot buffer behind the protective curb. And so that's a significant improvement on bike and pedestrian facility and movements, and certainly will enhance safety of those users. So we're committed to applying this concept on the 61 cross streets that either go over or under the highways of this project. So you can see, certainly, every project has its terminus, right? So beginning and end, but it also has its width. And in this case, the state's right-of-way width. And so we're looking to do what we can within the boundaries of our project. And so you can see the improvements that would bring. I mentioned earlier 2 pedestrian-only bridges of 38 here. Andrews is the historic connection, reconnection of Andrews Street with Freedmanstown with Central Business District and 4th Ward. And then on the east end, you've got a Walker is number 24 on the east end connecting into downtown. So key takeaways, the NHHIP is a highway component of the original joint effort by TXDOT, Metro, and HGAC to study the needs and propose improvements to the area between downtown and Bush Intercontinental Airport. The NHHIP has 9 in the top 20, the most congested roadway segments in Texas. The project strategically adds capacity to incentivize multimodal choices via high occupancy vehicle use, bus transit mode, as well as future-proof corridor for vehicle innovations. So the environmental clearance documents describe the management facility along 45 to being able to adjust as needed to any new technologies may come on board with connected or automated vehicles. We are proposing significant drainage improvements along Little White Oak Bayou. Just touched on the significant improvements for the pedestrian and bike facilities. $5.1 billion is currently secured out of the total $6.7 billion of construction costs. And we're looking to put that $5.1 billion to work as soon as possible with 5 projects staggered, with the first couple starting out in 2022. And I will end it with some key staff resources that's knowledgeable about the project, and certainly any other interest there is with our wider work in the Houston district. Thank you again for the opportunity to present the project to the group. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, I'm going to walk through some more, just a little bit the details here. We'll talk about some of the typical sections. We'll talk through some of the concerns and efforts that are going into managing traffic with a project of this scope. Varuna gave you highlight of NHHIP and the different segments. So over here on the left, you'll see this is segment 3, which comprises the loop around downtown, the ring around downtown, if you will. Segment 3 is broken into 4 projects. And this first project 3A is going to be delivered as a design bid build project. It's you can see on the presentation here on the right hand side, it's a relatively short project. It's only 1 mile, but we are the present condition is it's an elevated segment, and we are proposing to depress it, as you can see from that proposed typical section. That creates some challenges during construction for maintaining traffic while creating enough room for a contractor to build. There are some complications from a construction standpoint that are being worked through. There is a significant amount of traffic that travels through this corridor. You can see this is number 3 in the top 100 ranking in 2019. So you can imagine the number of vehicles that are through here every day, and in any closure, any construction that we can work through that allows for the maximum number of lanes to continue to be in place is best for everybody. But this is the first project here. It is a design bid build. It's still in design. That is still ongoing, and it is being designed in-house by TXDOT here in the Houston district. Moving to the next segment, 3 project that will be delivered is 3B is what we're calling it. This one will be delivered as a design bid build project. It involves the 69-288 interchange, and you can see, I'll point my cursor here, but it goes to almost the I-45 South interchange. So we're only encompassing the 69-288 interchange. We're stopping just short of the 45 and 69 interchange there with this particular project. What you'll notice here in this map is 3A and 3B are directly adjacent to each other and will have some overlapping construction. That anytime you have adjacent construction projects, you end up having to coordinate and communicate across those project boundaries to ensure that the construction happens, that it makes sense from a traffic flow perspective. Each contract is independent, so from an interface standpoint, you have two issues here. One is the contract delivery mechanism. The 3A project will be a design bid build, which is, there are certain conditions there where TXDOT has a certain amount of risk, we'll say, with a design bid build, a traditional project versus a design build where there is some risk transfer. And so one of the complications between these 2 projects is being able to make them work together so that traffic can continue to flow given the volumes that are through here, but also to separate them enough that we don't end up with a situation where one contract could potentially impact the progression of the other. And so that's on, you end up having to deal with that aspect on any any project, any major project like this where you have an interface, there's an added complication here because of the two delivery, the contract delivery mechanisms. So that's something that we've paid particular attention to as TXDOT, and trying to understand the phasing that's required for each of the projects, the complications that may come with each of the projects. They're somewhat unique between the two of them, even though they are right adjacent to each other. So trying to identify and understand where there may be some overlap or some involvement between the two projects that potentially could impact each other. We're trying as best we can to understand those early and minimize the amount of well, I'm drawing a blank on a word here, but we're trying to separate them as much as possible is what it comes down to. So 3B, you can see here, it is a depressed section. We're going to leave it depressed. There is some interchange stacking that will be reversed or modified in the 69 and 288 interchange itself, where we have a DC that is at the top of the interchange right now that will drop down as the 3A project lowers. The DCs that come in from 288 to 69 southbound, they have to lower to meet that new vertical alignment. So that's one of the factors that we're looking at right now between 3A and 3B. These are the first two projects that are that we're progressing to get out the door and get to construction. It's those are both still ongoing, but those are well on their way at this point. 3C is the third project on NHHIP segment 3. This is primarily the I-10 corridor. And it includes, it's on I-10 from the west side of Houston. You can see over here, it includes the interchange with I-45, and it comes to the east side. It includes the interchange with I-69, and then terminates going I-10 east a little piece. So overall, this project, the length is 7.3 miles. So it's a longer project. You can see the rankings here within the top 100. You've got four that are very highly ranked here. A lot of traffic on these corridors. These are, on this particular project, there are 3 interstates. You have I-10, you have I-45, and you have I-69. So anytime we're talking about an interchange or an interstate project, that's a big project normally in itself. We are adding, to complicate this a little bit, we have 3 interstates with 2 interchanges. So the scope is significant. If you can, you grasp that, it's quite large. The cost right now, it's just shy of $2 billion. So it's fully funded, and this will be delivered as a design build project. This is another of the design builds. There are some added, I guess, I don't want to say complications out here, but we have within the I-10 corridor, there are 5 railroad crossings, UPRR railroad crossings here that we are coordinating with Union Pacific on how to handle those crossings and any impacts from NHHIP and addressing those. And we have continuous conversation with UP to try to resolve, design issues, impacts that NHHIP may have on their facilities. And it's an ongoing conversation that we're well underway there. We're making good progress to get resolution on several items on that corridor. We have U of H downtown is immediately adjacent to I-10. My cursor's kind of up here by the I-10 45 interchange. They're roughly in that area. We will be building over the top of some of their facilities with a bridge. And so we have pretty significant communication and coordination in the past with them. And so we've got some stakeholders here who are directly impacted, and we have continued conversations with those guys, and it's going well. You can imagine the complexity of some of these issues that we're dealing with, trying to understand, what the impacts are to the stakeholders, how we as TXDOT may be able to address those or, work through some of their concerns as we try and deliver the project. So this one is, each one of these projects is somewhat unique, even though they're all relatively close together. This one, from a stakeholder standpoint, you've got a little more direct interaction with some of the stakeholders along the I-10 corridor. You can see down here, we're planning right now the plan is to start construction in 2024. So I-10 corridor will be, it's a few years out, but it will be a large project. This is showing some of the other typical sections here. In this particular interchange, you can see I-10, the 45 southbound, there's an HOV, I-10 HOV, I-10 westbound, and then 45. So you can see the existing condition and then what we're proposing to construct. It's quite a significant change. You can see obviously more bridge structure here. There are some express lanes on I-10. Get my cursor here, eastbound and westbound, that will get you through this area. So you can see that there's specific direct connectors from 45 that go into downtown, that separate some of these movements that are happening or exist today within this interchange. Moving to project 4 in segment 3. This project, to orient you here on the map, this is segment 3B, which was the first design build we're working now. 3D. Some of these numbers run together for me. No, that's not what I wanted to do. 3D will be a design build project. Right now, one of the bigger changes is you can see the existing condition today where there is bridge structure. This is the adjacent city street, which is Chartres. And right here, this ramp is access for the George R. Brown Convention Center. And one of the complications on this project is this area under here, George R. Brown, it's a large convention center for the Houston area. It's the George R. Brown, they use that area under that 69 southbound bridge as an operations area. And so to assist with their operation, what NHHIP is considering is when we lower this facility here, you'll see that we are maintaining an operation area for George R. Brown. This access ramp stays here, but you can see today how close these facilities are and how close they will be once the construction is complete. This is a depressed section where you see Chartres Street here. This is the same elevation as St. Emmanuel, which is really just the next street to the east in the downtown grid. But you can see that Chartres Street would be here at this elevation, and you can see that the elevation of the main lanes of 45, so 45 will be rerouted. Right now, 45 comes up and this is what we call the Pierce Elevated. It goes to the west side of downtown. 45 will be rerouted to the east side of downtown and parallel to 69, separate facilities. But that's what this project delivers. Along with that, on the west side where the existing 45 is, there are discussions about what happens with that facility, but we construct what we refer to as the downtown connectors. It is connections that come directly into downtown from the west side, so that access can be maintained. You can see that, I mean, the project is 4 miles, which is not the longest project we have, but that's a decent sized project. Obviously congestion, lots of traffic. You've got 4 and 6 of the rankings in this area. Cost right now is about $1.4 million. And so there's some complications here. This is a tunnel section, and a tunnel section comes with its own set of requirements that have to be considered from a ventilation, from fire safety. And so we've looked at some of those. We've tried to fully understand all the requirements there. And it's not something that is normally done on our projects. This is the first I've seen of it. So we've got a group of projects around I-10 that, I've said it before, geographically they're close, but the scopes they're unique depending on the project that you're talking about here. So this would be the 4th of the segment 3 projects that would be delivered. Advance here. So you can see on the west side here what the existing configuration is, and then what we're going to, where we're showing the downtown connectors, and then you've got local streets that would remain. Segment 2, in this area, segment 2, you can see the rankings. Varuna touched on the rankings, and along this entire corridor, there's a significant amount of traffic. So again, a lot of vehicles. Estimated cost $1.1 million. Segment 2 is further out. You can see construction here at 2026, but we're looking at some, obviously a complete reconstruction, where you've got general purpose lanes, you've got managed lanes here in the middle, where the existing condition has a reversible 1-lane HOV. And so that will be expanded here, as you can see there in a typical section. Segment 1, from 610 north to Beltway 8 north, project length of 9 miles. So that's the entirety of the length of segment 1. If you recall from Varuna's discussion, there's a number of ways that this could potentially be broken up. This is further out in the future, but you can see as well here, it's ranked number 12 in the top 100, significant number of vehicles. But same thing, you can see here, the HOV is a 1-lane reversible, and we are proposing to have these managed lanes here in the middle, spread the general purpose lanes out, and then we've got an additional frontage road lane that is shown here. One of the things that we've done in coordination with some of our local partners, we have established some working groups, And one of the working groups that I'm on is called the Traffic Steering Committee. And what this is it's a collaboration between TXDOT, Metro, City of Houston, the Downtown District, HGAC, and it's a group of us, of representatives from each one of those entities that come together and we talk through how we're able to address the concerns of each of the entities relative to the construction that's going to happen for NHHIP. As you can imagine, when we're dealing with the number of vehicles that we're talking about and the scope of the construction, there are going to be lane closures. There are going to be times where lanes may be reduced, where entrance and exit ramps are either closed or relocated. Metro has bus services. They have light rail that comes in and out of downtown that we will cross. So there's any number of topics that we've talked about to try and understand the impact that construction may have and understand from our local partners here, are there key issues, what are their key issues that we need to consider, and how can we as a region work together to try and minimize the impact that the traveling public sees on our roadways while this construction is happening. For example, there are existing access points into downtown within the ring around downtown, within segment 3. And so we've contemplated which of these access points into downtown could potentially be closed at the same time. We wouldn't want to end up in a situation where we have multiple access points in the same location that are closed, and we end up not allowing access into downtown from a certain segment of roadway. So we're trying to be aware of what impacts may be out there. Some of the other items that we've talked about are, the city of Houston has projects that are ongoing in this general area, and we are trying to understand potential detour routes for construction. If we have to do a closure, the developer has to do a closure, or we have to reroute traffic, how will that traffic move? And are there adjacent projects that may be ongoing that we wouldn't want to send traffic to? Does the city have a project where they're closing down half of their facility to reconstruct, and we may end up sending traffic into another construction zone? So it's through communication with our local partners here that we're trying to understand and get ahead of some of those problems and coordinate amongst us so that we can address, identify and address those issues now versus when we get to construction. And then we're dealing with it in real time. If, a little bit of planning now may work out in everybody's best interest later on. So that's an effort that is underway and it was well attended. And so that's an effort that we're putting in right now to make sure that we do our due diligence in trying to make sure that this NHHIP construction goes as well as it needs to. So the last slide I have here, and we're going to see if this works. Okay, so this is a rendering. This is coming in on 3A. This is I-69. This here going to the left is spur 527. You can see where we depress it here. TXDOT is going to build these caps above. This is green space that is potential if there are partners with TXDOT that will fund some of those. That is not something that will be constructed as part of the project here, but this is coming into the 3A, 3B interchange where this interface happens. As we turn here, you're now looking at the 69-288 interchange, which is part of NHHIP Segment 3B construction. These arch bridges are city cross streets that will be reconstructed. The arch bridges are somewhat complex. They are intended to match the existing arch bridges that are just south on I-69. This we're coming into is the I-69, I-45 interchange, which is a part of the 3D project. This big building you're seeing in the middle of the screen is the George R. Brown Convention Center. And the area that's fenced off there is that operations area that I was talking about. You'll see that I-45 and I-69 depress here. You can see the cap that we construct. There are ongoing discussions with potential partners about creating a green space here, but that is something that would be funded by others. And I will click play. The other large building here behind George R. Brown is Minute Maid Park. That's where the Astros play. So one of the other considerations that we are looking at as a traffic steering committee is major events at facilities like that are adjacent to the project. This is coming into the I-45, I-69 interchange, which would be part of the 3C project, the design build project. You can see the number of structures and the weaving that has to happen to make all of these structures work. It's, I like to think of these as one large puzzle, and how do you move the pieces to create the ultimate configuration while still keeping the existing in place. You can see here we have one railway crossing that comes right through the middle of this interchange, which creates its own complexities. We are turning west here on I-10. This is the I-10 and I-45 lanes on the north side of downtown. This would be part of the 3C project as well, part of that 7-mile project that encompasses 3 interstates, the I-10, I-45, and I-69. The blue lanes here are the express lanes that are just a direct pass-through. You'll see the interstate is separated. This goes into the downtown connectors, which dump you on the west side of Houston to keep that existing access. That is where what's called now is the Pierce Elevated I-45 routes today on the west side of downtown. And this will be reconstructed, and the downtown connectors will keep that existing access where it is today, but it will not continue around in that same footprint that I-45 is today on the west side. So Walker and McKinney, there's on this side, City Hall is over in this area. There's some playhouses, I guess. There's some very large access that comes in off this way. And so you can see where you've got these cross streets that come across us. Andrew Street, that's the street that we will reconnect that Varuna mentioned in his portion of the presentation. That recreates that connection that was severed originally by I-45. And so that gives you an idea of what that looks like. It's a large scope. This is the website for I-45 for NHHIP. It's I-45 North and more. All of the information is here. There are obviously the record of decision. You've got project information here that is available for review. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop for information related to NHHIP if you desire to go read up on additional additional information here.
Hey, Jonathan, I have a few questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hey guys, Varuna and Grady, great presentation. Seems like a very simple project, isn't it? Not complicated at all. So I have a few questions. Varuna, has the compensation discussion, which is always sensitive, has that been taken on already with home and business owners? And how has that been received?
So from our perspective, we have started acquiring right of way, and we actually started acquiring before we got the ROD, what's called early acquisition, and it's really at TXDOT's risk. And so from our interaction with Houston Housing Authority for Clayton Homes, they see it as a positive. The property owners that we've engaged with, the homeowners and tenants, has largely been positive. And so we're working through those acquisitions. We were focused on the first two projects along 69 from the spur 527 to I-45, the design bid build and the first design build. So that's where our focus is. I'm not sure if Grady covered this in his, but one of kind of the sensitive, complicated acquisitions is actually the Mexican consulate. Essentially, you're acquiring foreign land. It's treated as, so we cannot use eminent domain to come to closure on that. And so we've been successful. They are fully relocated in their new location. In fact, in a couple of weeks, they're going to have a ribbon cutting for the new facility. They've fully vacated the current facility. We've secured it, and now it's doing the testing for hazmat materials, and then we'll proceed to demo if everything checks out, or if it needs, or after remediation if needed. So it's kind of a wide swath with an old corridor like this in downtown Houston. You find some interesting properties. It's not standard just business, or there's some interesting arrangements that our right-of-way folks have to sift through.
I'm sure there's, as it is, there's a lot going on in that area, right? So was there, and you may have covered it in either one of you, but was there any specific consideration for freight traffic? Are you all adding a separate freight lanes or anything at all?
There's no separate freight dedicated lane for freight.
Okay.
The benefit comes when you provide more capacity for carpoolers. You free up capacity with the general purpose lanes, plus the reconstruction of the interchanges and auxiliary lanes. So you get folks out of the way, have them make their decision to change facilities a lot far in advance, even between the two directions that they have to choose between. That's where we see the benefit to freight for throughput.
Okay. Yeah, given the port area, I was wondering if, and I'm not sure how much of traffic that goes through that area, but I would think with the ports being on the south, I'm sure there's a lot of traffic goes on 45 corridor already, right?
Yeah, and what the data we see is actually a lot of the traffic from the port actually stays in the region.
Okay.
Service the population here. And so just right off the bat, you've got, the regional roads taking the brunt because it's circulated within the region. It's not leaving, right?
Yeah. So it's staying within the area. And what about the managed lanes? I know these are non-tolled managed lanes, right? But do you have any section where they are reversible managed lanes at all?
With the proposed project?
proposed project? Yes.
No.
Okay.
What we're building in the form of managed lanes are in all instances bidirectional. Grady touched on the express lanes on I-10, and we're kind of using express because we're not limiting it to transit and carpool. Anyone
Yep.
can be in. And we're looking for throughput on I-10 through downtown, whereas the 45 managed lanes is limited to HOV, high occupancy, and transit. Now, over time, we can assess whether we need to kick out the single occupancy from the I-10 Express, particularly as we study I-10 from downtown west to 610 Loop, 610 West, and then out east, east of the project to see if it makes sense to restrict it to HOV transit.
So if you're allowing both users, right, how are you compensating or encouraging HOV users to use the I-10 Express?
So I think the rationale for not restricting it immediately off the bat for HOV and transit is because it's a relative short stretch. So
Okay.
the I-10 the limits of I-10 within the NHHIP is approximately 2.5. I don't think it gets up to 3 miles. And so we really didn't see until it's linked up with the matching facility to the west and east, where you have a longer stretch. We didn't see the need in the near term to restrict it to just HOV transit, which is different from 45. That's a 12-mile stretch.
Right.
And will connect to existing HOV north of Beltway 8, which goes on for another 10 miles north of there.
Okay. And one final question. Grady, you mentioned you were coordinating with several other projects or several other stakeholders to make sure that there are no major concurrent projects going on in the area, or if there is, you're scheduling it around it and making sure that you have areas that you can provide detours. And through your coordination with Metro, has there been any discussion in increasing the frequency for Metro in case if people decide especially during construction, if people decide to take more transit?
I don't know that Metro, I don't want to speak for Metro. I mean, we've talked about what potential impacts there may be to their operations. At this point, when NHHIP segment 3 was originally considered from a design build perspective, it was the 3 design build projects that we have right now. It was originally one project. And so the conversation at that time with Metro was different because we were potentially impacting that entire ring around downtown at one time. Whereas now, some of those impacts may be more localized, and where we may have at one point had multiple entries into downtown affected at one time that may have driven some more people to transit. I'm not sure that we have a firm grasp, or haven't heard from Metro on what their expectation may be in relation to the construction, the scope being lessened. So I think to a certain extent, Metro would react accordingly, but I'm not sure at this point I'm not sure of their plans to address it maybe ahead of time and plan for it. They'll react based on their customers' needs when that time comes, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you both for the answers. Appreciate it.
I have one quick question before we wrap up. I know, Grady, you mentioned several times some green caps that could potentially go over portions of this highway development. And I wanted to know, will the the structure that will be built, will it be ready to receive that that cap if that does go through with a partner, or would that involve some redesign if you were to find a partner to work on those parks?
No, the intent is to design it such that it could be added. But we don't want to get into not accounting for it now or during the initial design and then having to adjust. So it is contemplated to account for that during the design.
Great, thanks. Well, thank you, Grady and Varuna, for taking time to speak to us. We have the northern end of I-45 up here in Dallas, which has its own kind of big project potentially coming down the pipe. So it's good to hear what's going on the south end. If you have any additional questions you would like to ask our speakers, please put those in the comments section below. Those questions and comments will be collected and emailed to our speakers. Remember, if you would like a PDH for today's presentation, please visit our website, www.dallasasc.org, or click the link in the video description below. This link will remain open until the end of the month. The PDH certificates will be emailed out to the email address you registered for the meeting with during the last week of June. This general branch meeting is also accompanied by 2 Institute technical presentations. The Structural Engineering Institute has a presentation called Long-Span Lateral Force Resisting Systems, and our Geo Institute has a presentation on ground modification and various methods for improving soil performance in Texas. Both of these presentations are available on our Dallas Branch YouTube channel and qualify for 1 PDH each. I also want to let you know that the Dallas Branch Officer and Committee Chair nominations are open at this time. If you are interested in joining the leadership team with ASCE Dallas, please check out our June newsletter or visit our branch website to find the nomination form. We are always looking for fresh perspectives and new ideas to make our branch better than ever. Thanks for attending the virtual Dallas Branch meeting, and I hope you have a great week. With that, I will adjourn the meeting. I look forward to seeing you all in person very soon.